Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
Strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey. Today's guest, we have Danny Vann with us. Danny, how are you doing today?
Awesome. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you can make it. Today is a story about a guy who knows a thing or two about some foster care stories, beginning a couple of years back with your own, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, been through a lot.
How did you end up in the foster care system?
Well, I suppose typical broken home syndrome. Parents had a violent divorce back in the late 60s. Mom got all 6 kids. Tried to struggle along. Jobs for women back then weren't really that glamorous, and so she kind of struggled to keep us fed and stuff. And we went through, they didn't have WIC back then, so we had Korean War surplus, powdered eggs, powdered milk, brick cheese, all that good stuff. Struggled to get along. She couldn't really make ends meet, so she started farming us out to family. So we went through what they today call the Kinship Process. And those didn't last very long before we wound up back at Mom's. She remarried. And this is all before foster care, mind you, right? She remarried. That failed after about a year and a half. Then she got depressed. Everything kind of fell apart at that point. The house got condemned. And she took us to Catholic orphanage, St. Vincent's Home in Saginaw. And we spent a cycle there. I say a cycle, about a year. And from there, they put us out to foster care. And so by this time, I've been in 5 or 6 different school systems. My 5 siblings and I were split up, boys and girls, at the home. But it was a blessing. I can still remember walking up the steps. It was great big, huge, like you see in the movies, those great big, huge brick, majestic buildings and 14 steps to lead up to the front door. And man, we went up there and guess what? We got new clothes. We had food every day. We had people caring about us and watching over us. And I was pretty tall at that point for my age. I was about 10, 11 years old, maybe 12. And so I was one of the taller people on the playground. So the bullies, all I had to do was have a little chat with them, and they kind of left my family alone. So we survived pretty well there. So that was the stepping out of all of that chaos into a foster home that leads you up to me entering the foster home itself. So,
well, that had to be scary for a young kid. How old were you when you ended up, when your mom ended up starting farming you guys out, and then you stepped into the foster system itself?
It was, I'm the oldest of 6, and I was about 9, 10 years old when all this started. And so, again, being the oldest of 6 kids, I was groomed to be the caretaker. Mom bragged that by the time I was 4, I could change a diaper. So even at 4 years old, I was Mom's right-hand man, and so I was the caretaker, looking after everybody, making sure everybody was safe and taken care of. And it was crazy, just totally crazy.
Well, and I imagine that you mentioned walking in that you were surprised, even happy that you're seeing food on a regular basis and new clothes and things like that. But I imagine that had to be frightening as well for a kid of any age. But 8 or 9, 10 years old, you're probably still in a place with some fear.
Yeah, it was. It really was. But here's the good thing. We had been raised, if mom didn't do anything right, the one thing that she did do was take us to church every Sunday. We went to catechism. So we got the basics, and that was awesome, right? So we were around the Catholic Church, and we saw the priests and the nuns. And when we walked up those steps to that great big huge building that I agree with you, under normal circumstances would be very intimidating to a youngster, but we got dropped off, and all of the people that met us at the door were nuns in the old traditional habits, right? And they had a couple of priests, with the great big smiling faces. They had Knights of Columbus volunteers. So, I mean, it was a happy place, believe it or not. I mean, I hate to pull the Annie card out, but I mean, it was a decent place, I mean, and it was stable environment for us, so scary or not, it was still, it was decent.
If you're talking about Little Orphan Annie, if you're just listening to this, I promise you guys, he doesn't look like Little Orphan Annie. She was a lot cuter. No offense, but she was.
That's all right. I get it.
So, I talk to a lot of people about their journeys, and a lot of kids are very angry about the journey that they went through, and they place that anger in different places, whether they're angry at their parents, or they're angry at the foster parents, or the system itself.
Yep.
Where did you have that? Where did you place that anger as a kid?
When it first all started, our anger really first was pointed at Dad, because he's the one that left, right? And, we didn't understand what was going on because of our age, and because all I knew is that leading up to the divorce, there were a lot of fights and arguments. So my anger and the anger of most of my siblings at the beginning was at Dad. Then when Mom dropped us off, there was a lot of confusion when we were going to the relatives, but at least we were around people we knew, and they, for the most part, were okay with having us around, at least at the beginning. Of course, then when they had to send us back, then you got more anger, because now you're angry at the people who coulda, shoulda, woulda helped, right? But they only did a little bit, and it wasn't enough. So now you're angry at them because they didn't step up. And trust me, our family, we're Italian, So Mom had 8 brothers and sisters. I had 8 aunts and uncles. And there's only 6 of us, They all had pretty good sized families, though, to be honest. But so Dad, we targeted Dad. Then we got mad at the relatives. And then when Mom dropped us off, it was like, see, she got pregnant when she was 15. I was born when she was 16. By the time she was 22, she had 6 kids.
Wow.
So none of this should be a surprise to anybody, right? When she finally dropped us off at the orphanage, it was, I suppose for her, somebody took a couple 1,000 pounds weight off her back, and she went and flew like an eagle. We didn't see her for quite a while. And when we did see her, it was hit and miss. Excuse me. And, so then the anger went back to her too. It's like, who does care about us? I was fortunate. The foster homes that I was in only 2 of them, were very good, and the people were good. Some of my siblings, that wasn't quite so lucky, but, so the anger pretty much goes back to the parents, and we carried that back and forth for quite a while, as life went on, because there's a lot more to this story. It does turn out pretty darn good. God has a plan. We don't understand it at the time, but, it did turn out good. So the anger part, it was the parents and the relatives. They could have, should have, would have done more.
I know it's a common thing to see. Did you ever find yourself angry at God for putting you in that position as a kid? Were you in that mindset?
I can't say that I was, because like I said, we were brought up with God, and so I kept begging God to help. I kept begging God to help me understand. I kept begging God for the miracles, give us a miracle. But no, I don't think myself, I never really got mad at God because, I know he's in control of it all. I never understood it. So what I did was I prayed for understanding, and I got it eventually.
Yeah, unfortunately, that understanding part usually takes a hot minute to get to.
Yeah, it takes a few hot minutes.
And that's I asked that question, not to point anything at God there, but I know a lot of people, especially when they're kids, have a hard time understanding that long game. And It seems that God's plans are usually long game plans.
They are long game plans. And here's the thing is, I wound up studying a lot more. To me, God was the thing that held me together, God and my music. I love music. Okay. So, even as a little kid before everything fell apart, mom was in love with Elvis's singing. I became infatuated with his music. It's kind of, who wouldn't love all that kind of fun music as a kid, where you get to jump around and all that. So God to me was part of my anchor, and knowing that he had a plan and that something was going to happen that would work out, even though we had all these circumstances, things worked out. Good things happened along the way. They weren't all everything I wanted or everything that we want. Every kid wants everything to go back the way it was and for it to be good, but that's not life. That's not normal. Rarely does that happen in my observation. But I learned a lot about God in that those people that he loves, he chastens. And even you go back and look at some of the big stories about Joseph. He was in prison all those years for something he didn't do. You look at David, and here he was anointed king, and he had to run for his life and hide in caves for years. So when I started looking around and saying, well, these are the big guys in the Bible, and look what God did to them to get them ready. So I kind of look at it again. I'm an optimist, so to me, it's not only about it, the glass looks half full to me. It's like it's half full on its way to being filled up because there's more. I know there's more, and if I work at it, if I'm positive, if I try to find people that can help make it better, it can get better. And it does, sometimes, most of the time it'll get better.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Carol Dweck's work at all or not, but she's the author of the book Mindset. And she talks a lot about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. The difference between life sucks or life is difficult right now.
Yes.
It's not better or it's
Yes.
not better yet. And
Right.
That's a mindset that most kids don't stumble into. How did you find that?
Dad and the priests and the nuns at catechism. God has a plan. He's working things out. My dad always told me, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And so I put the two of those together, and it's like, I'm going to get through this. I know we can make it better. And the other thing is, I had 5 little brothers and sisters in tow. So I'm the kid out front chopping the weeds and pushing people out of the way to protect my family from a very young age, So I had a lot of motivation.
I can believe that for sure.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever get a chance to reconnect with your bio family?
Yes.
Did you reconcile those issues with them?
After a lot of struggling, we finally did. Yeah, it took a while. And like I said, more than a hot minute because, excuse me, it took a while because there was denial. There was, as a kid, you kind of sort of want to blame yourself, but then you get to grow up and you start looking at things through an adult's eyes, and you look back and you go, wait a minute, why did they do that? And I write about that in my book, My Journey in the Shadow of the King. There's a whole chapter on recognizing that my parents are people too. And they were doing what they thought at the time. And I'm not going to use the word best because some of it was pretty crappy, but they did what they had to at that moment in time for them, to survive and do what they could for us, whatever it was. And again, I'm trying to avoid the word best because that's a judgmental call. But it was a revelation to me to discover in my parents' case that when my mom, who was a product of the Depression, the Great Depression, she was a child in that, and so was my dad. They were both born in the middle of the Depression. Okay. So they had little. When my mom's parents couldn't feed all 9 of the kids, they farmed mom out to Aunt Marion's house for a year or 2. So guess what mom did when she got stranded with 6 kids and couldn't feed them anymore? Out you go. That's the way we do things. And I didn't put that together, honestly, until I started writing the book. I had gone back and talked to mom. I had asked her, why did you do this? And of course, the answer you usually get is, well, that's the best I could do. And I'm not going back there. It's too painful, yada, yada, yada. Right. It's like, well, yeah, it's painful for you, but I'm trying to figure this out here for the rest of my life. Well, just let it go. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. I got to understand, and this understanding came to me. And it turns out that parents are people too, and they make mistakes. And unfortunately, when they have kids, we get caught in the crossfire.
Oh, unfortunately, you're very right there. So how long were you in foster homes?
I was in between the kinship care and the couple of foster homes. It was probably about 4 to 5 years total. And by the time the quote unquote rescue came, this was really heavy because, in that 4th or 5th year, 2 of my sisters were being put up for adoption. And that was just crushing. I was devastated. It's like, what's going to happen? I'm never going to see them again, And so I'm crying out to God, what are we going to do now, And next thing I know, there's a paper that shows up at the foster home that says Dad has repurchased the family property and is in the process of getting it recertified as a living place again. And he's going to get all 6 of us kids back. And he did.
Wow.
Yeah. So the problem is he hadn't really healed from all of his problems. So we went back into more violence, more alcohol, a stepmom that he met at one of the corner bars who was supposed to originally be our nanny, who wound up being our stepmom, and she was an alcoholic. Over their 30 years of marriage, he broke her jaw 3 times.
Hey there, Foster Care Nation. We'd like to take a quick minute to step out of the podcast here and ask you guys for a little bit of support. If you could share an episode with people, friends, in a group, with family, anywhere where there's somebody who would like to hear this. Also, if you'd like to join us and support our mission, a couple dollars a month would be really helpful. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/fostercarenation. Now back to the show. Whoa.
So when we went back into the house, it was kind of a little bit of a honeymoon, very short honeymoon, and then kaboom. The fight started, the arguing started, the fist through the doors started again, and it was deja vu all over again, But this time, the difference was I was about 15, right? And I went to the caseworker in the front of the court, and I said, this crap ain't working. This is not a healthy place. I don't want to be there anymore. Because I saw healthy when I was in the foster home, right? I saw healthy at the orphanage, relatively healthy, right? And so I'm going, I don't have to. I can't do this again, And so we did bounce back and forth. When Mom heard that Dad bought the house and was fixing it up and getting us kids back, all of a sudden, out of wherever it was she flew to, she flew back. And she wanted the kids, right? Of course, those are my kids. What are you doing with them? It's like, well, you left them, So that started up, and Mom hated the stepmother, and police were called, and fights broke out. Mom opened a pizzeria. I wondered where she got the money from. I finally found out Dad had to pay her off on the house because it was her house, So, this story, so Mom's closing the pizzeria, going to meet, Dad and the stepmother because they punished one of my siblings, and Mom had so many rolls of quarters in her purse, and the scuffle ensued, and Mom just swung her purse, and money went, the coins went flying everywhere after it made contact with stepmom, who went flying head over heels. I wasn't there for it, but we heard all the details. And so it was just chaos, more chaos, because, and I know like Dr. John DeGarmo and some of the other folks out there are talking about reforming the system. This is one of the bugaboos is, yes, you want to reunite the family, but you don't want to reunite the fire. And this was chaotic fire that was just flaming all around. So it bounced back and forth between the parents several times.
Sounds to me like you experienced a lot of dysfunction and violence and problems in your original family. And
yes.
So these problems, as we all know, tend to be generational issues. They don't
yes.
go away for
yes.
kids usually. And so how many times have you broken your wife's jaw?
None?
No. You might have some catching up to do on that one.
No, I don't. I broke that chain. There were moments, where I lived what I learned, and my conscience got the best of me. My studies, my Bible studies, and the fact that I had sworn that I would not walk that same path. So I worked very hard at it.
That's the real question, I think, is you saw that, you knew it's a generational thing. Typically it goes on and on and on until somebody breaks it. I know you said you chose not to do that. What was your catalyst for change in that moment that you said, okay, I am putting my flag in the ground here and I will never do this again?
Right. What that catalyst for change is my absolute phobia of the D word. I did not want to get a divorce. I did not want to have my kids experience a family being ripped apart like that. Was I successful? Not entirely, but that's another story. But I did go to counseling as a result of that. I knew that something wasn't right. I did discover I couldn't control myself for some reason. Of course, I did come to realize I had pent up anger. I came to realize I had bad examples, but I'm an adult now. I can make better choices. Wanting to make better choices is not the same as walking that and figuring out what do you do? Because I didn't know what to do, other than explode, throw something, break something, was the pattern I was shown. But I went and got counseling. There wasn't as much self-help back then, as there is today. We didn't have the internet. I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have all these, dial a counselor stuff like they have these days. But, so I did, I found a counselor, and to this day, I've been through over 15 years of counseling, on and off during different periods of my life to resolve different waves of issues.
Well, that's amazing that you've been able to do that and had the foresight to realize that this is where I'm heading, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to repeat this. So you said you had a family that you've created. How many kids do you have?
2.
Oh.
I have 2 natural kids. I'm married now, and I have 4 adult step kids. But I have 2 natural children. Yeah.
Okay. And so your kids got to see you struggle through that and turn your life around?
They didn't see as much of it as I did because I wasn't as bad. And I also worked very hard at, if I had an issue, I tried to put it behind closed doors. One of the things that I recall in my book, my journey in the shadow of the king, is that we witnessed when I was growing up, physical violence right in front of us. I mean, it wasn't, it got to the point where, being Italian, we had tossed salad, most meals. And in our house, it was literally tossed. Everything was thrown. Mom was Italian. Dad was bigger than her. So she just threw stuff at him. So at our house, a tossed salad was a normal thing, And so she would shoo us upstairs toward the end, just before they got divorced. We had an upstairs stairway that had a door on it with a slide bolt, where the slide and flips down. And she would put us upstairs when the arguments broke out so that none of us got hurt. Because I tried to stand up to Dad once, 10 years old. I got in between him and Mom and found myself in the other side of the room on my head because he just backhanded me. And of course, him being an adult sailor, with his physique and everything, I just flew like back to the rag doll, But yeah, I took this to a different place with my kids, and to the point where, unfortunately, I did file for divorce, and the kids were totally shocked. It's like, what happened? So they, I pretty well hit it, But the good news is, I'll flip ahead. And again, I was so thrilled when I put this book together last year that my son agreed to write the final chapter here. And I'll just flip to it if I may do that, because he tells the story and encourages other people that are angry with their parents to not carry that, because I had a heart attack. I had heart surgery first, open heart surgery at 45. Did you know stress kills people with heart attacks and stuff?
I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I lived through that too. Thank God that I lived through that. But anyway, he wrote this addendum to my book. And in there, he says, when I had that heart attack, when he saw that his dad had a heart attack and could possibly open heart surgery, could possibly not be around anymore, it was a major wake-up call to him. And so he, at that point, had decided that he wanted to reopen our relationship. And so it's just a thrill to have, it's about a page and a half in here, but my son closes the whole book by saying that he learned that there's bigger things, and that for me, that parents are people too and make mistakes, so it was awesome.
Sounds to me like one of the things you taught was generational growth.
Yes.
And that's amazing, because this is one of the things that's always been one of the drives inside of our journey through foster care, is that I know that I might change the kids today.
Right.
And maybe they're tomorrow, and maybe 10 years from now or 20 years from now, and their kids tomorrow and their grandkids tomorrow.
Yes.
So just that ability to create some level of experience that's positive in the world goes on long before our death. No.
Yeah.
Beyond our death, not before it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, long after. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that ability to really transcend time with our behavior and our dedication to doing the right thing and helping out others. And that's what you're doing right here, right now, today, telling your story and having this book that you've got there. What can you tell us about what drove you to write this book?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's a fun story. I got into entertaining. As I said, I wanted to be a musician. So I got into entertaining, and I was driven, as if you couldn't tell. It was like, I'm going to be successful. I'm not going to follow in my parents' footsteps. I'm going to make things better and have a better life for me and my kids. And so I got into entertaining and was able to actually ultimately perform in Las Vegas. I performed here in Michigan as a headliner at the Royal Oak Music Theater on what would have been Elvis's 50th birthday. And I got to sing Heartbreak Hotel with the co-author, Tommy Durden. We actually sang Heartbreak Hotel together on that stage. What a thrill.
How amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was just incredible. And in between all of that, I had struggles, I had failures, I had successes. I sang in driveways of Midas Muffler opening celebrations, and I was the headliner at the Clare County Fair one year. So I went the gamut, but it was all fun for me. And the thing I discovered is that if I take my pain and my issues and my problems and look at other people that either have that or worse and try and help them, it actually makes me grow and makes me feel better about myself. And it takes the focus off of my pain when I go help someone else's pain. And so as an entertainer, I didn't realize it at the time, but every time I got applause, it wasn't just for me. I was out making other people happy, which is how Mom grew me. I didn't change her diapers like I did at home, but my job was to go take care of people and make them happy and make them please them. So over the years, I entertained, and finally, probably in my 40s, because I'm 67 now, in my 40s, it hit me that, the story started for me musically in the orphanage. When we were there, a volunteer local band came in and performed for us kids. And of course, I'm wanting to be a big star someday, right? So a live band to me at 9, 10 years old was like, wow, these guys are musicians. And so when they got done with their little mini concert, they came off the stage, Jason, and they shook my hand. And it blew my mind that these musicians would take this time to do this. So when I started entertaining, do you know that I jumped off the stage during the concert? And that one handshake, I was counting it last night in my sleep, getting ready for today's interview. I have shaken over 10,000 hands. And probably a third of those were kids in parks and rec shows, in family concerts and all. So one handshake turned into 10,000. And I can't tell you how many people have come up to me over the years and thanked me for doing that. And people, little kids that were 5 years old back then, I got them up on stage to do Blue Suede Shoes with me, right? Because I was always about including the kids, right? And now here's a 25-year-old, 30-year-old person walking up to me. I remember when you did that. Do you know what that did for me? And so over the years, those things happened. Well, in my 40s, I decided it was time to go back to St. Vincent's Home and be the person that showed up on stage for those kids. And guess what? This was in probably the 1990s, I want to say. Yeah, because I was, So in the 1990s, I went back to do a concert for the kids at St. Vincent's Home. And guess what? They told me no. They said, we got mostly boys here now, and these guys are having problems, and this is 1990, whatever year it was, and they're going, they don't care about Elvis. You're not going to do them any good. And so they told me no, and I went, once again, I look up at God and I go, God, I want to give back. Now what do I do? On my way home, I drove through Saginaw, and there was a Michigan a Lutheran boys home. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to drop in and see if they would want me to come and encourage their boys. And they said yes. And so I performed there. And what I did was, of course, you're talking to Danny Vann here, not Joe Smith. So I didn't just show up with my guitar to sing. I showed up with my guitar. I sang for the boys. I got to know them. I got to know the counselor. This was just me and them and my guitar, right? And I talked to the counselors, and they said, yeah, a lot of these kids, Christmas is coming. They don't have families. They don't have anything to do. I said, really? I said, okay, do me a favor. Get a wish list from each boy. 3 things that if they could have anything they wanted for Christmas, what would it be? And tell them we're going to try to get at least one of those for them, right? So I set up a Christmas concert at a local restaurant, okay? They donated all the food for the kids and the counselors and the whole staff. They set up a head table for these kids like you were at a wedding. And I went out into the community and raised money and got donations, and we literally got every kid everything on their list and all kinds of stuff for the home itself. They needed a pickup truck to take everything home when we were done with the concert. Did that 3 years in a row. And the second year, when it was over in the spring, and we were talking about the third year, the director of the home, his name was Gordy Kukulis, called me up and he said, Danny, he said, one of the kids just was in my office and wanted to know who this Danny Vann is and why he cares about us. And I said, Gordy, you go back and tell that young man, when I was his age, I was in a home where he is, and somebody came and did this for me. And now it's my turn to do it for you. And when you grow up, it'll be your turn. And he went back and told them that. They called me later that year and wanted me to come to their annual recognition dinner. And they gave me a certificate, which I told them I didn't want. But they said, too bad you did this. We want to recognize you. And they wanted me to tell my story. And afterwards, I told probably a lot of what you just heard.
Hey there, Foster Care Nation. If you'd like to find yourself in a group with like-minded people, head over to Facebook, and you can find us at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. We've got a group over there where we talk about foster care, we talk about adoption, and we talk about all the things related. If your podcast player allows it, you can also reach down and hit that subscribe button so you get notified every week when we put up uploads. Every Tuesday, a new episode comes out. We'd love to see you next week. Now back to the show.
And Gordy came up to me and he goes, Danny, he said, we want you to tell a story about what you've been through. And I didn't understand at the time. And I said, why? And he says, do you realize how encouraging it is to these kids in this home to know that one of them made it to where you are? That the counselors who are trying to help these kids, it encourages them to know that one of these kids could grow up and do this in the future. He said, your story needs to be heard. And this was in 2003, right? Well, in 2013, 10 years later, I had a heart attack and it disabled me. And I spent a year and a half on my sofa, zombified, trying to figure out. I lived through the heart attack thanks to my fabulous wife, who saw my face when I came home from work that day, and I was going to go lay down. ER said if I would have laid down, I never would have got up. So I owe my life to my wife, you know. So anyway, I'm sitting on the couch asking God again, what now? What do I do now? I can't entertain anymore. I can't work anymore. What do you want me to do with the rest of my life? And all of a sudden, Gordy's words kept coming back. Your story needs to be heard. And so I started writing the book. And it's, in fact, Gordy agreed. I got back in touch with him all those years later, and he agreed to write the foreword of the book. So Gordy put his words in front of the book as far as his version of the story. And the first box of books that I published went to the Wellspring Lutheran Family Services Group. They took 60 books and have been encouraging foster families and the homeless shelters and some of the other people that they support. They pass these books out to. Long answer. Sorry.
That's all right. What a testament to the value of one guy shaking a kid's hand.
Isn't that something? Just
that much kindness to reach out and acknowledge a kid who's in a difficult place.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are the things that I struggle with when people say I could never do foster care. I could not do that. Sometimes a handshake does what?
Yeah. Take an hour and just go visit somebody. You know, I mean, that's all these band people did. And I couldn't even tell you the name of the band or the person that shook my hand.
Yeah.
You know, but look what he did. And consequently, you know, I don't, again, it's not about credit. It's about having love for people, you know. That's it. When you reach outside of yourself, no matter how much you're hurting, it's going to help you heal. That's my message.
I don't disagree with you a bit there. That's the power of our world, I think, is that we live in a society and a culture that's really, really interested in making certain that we get what's owed to us, and we tell everybody how good we are and how amazing we are. And sometimes just reaching a hand out, helping someone else is the greatest thing we can do for ourselves, for the people behind us, and the future generations yet to come.
Yep. Listen for that whisper, because there'll be a whisper that says, go talk to that person. Go give them your gift card that you just got. Go give it to this person. And there's a whisper in there. And one of the other stories for me is at a really down time in my adult life, I was struggling and decided to go visit an old friend of mine who was out in Arizona. And, you know, again, another turning point, I call all this my journey, and the cover of my book has got a long road on it leading up to a Bible with a crown on it. So, you know, we're leading ourselves to this everlasting, you know, joy that's going to come. If you're a Bible reader, flip back to the back of the book. I have read the back of the book, you know, I like doing that. And you go all the way to the last 2 chapters, and I got great news, everybody. We really do all live happily ever after. Because he comes back, he restores the world, the Garden of Eden is restored, and he sets up his kingdom, and we really do all live happily ever after. Anyway, I went to Arizona and met with an old friend of mine who was one of the early guitar players back before my parents got divorced. When I got my first guitar, oh no, I take that back. It was after my parents got divorced, because I got my first guitar when I was 15. It was the one thing that my stepmom did that really changed my life. She bought me my first guitar. So I got to give her that. When she really, in her older age, she really did care a lot about us, and she reached out to us a lot. But I went to Arizona, and while I was there, again, crying out to God, dead end road, potholes in my road, you know, life sucks, right? And having a little bit of a pity party, and I cry out to God, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And all of a sudden, at about 2:00 in the morning, I'm playing my guitar, just trying to get through the night, right? And because my buddy was a guitar player, we had played guitar for about 5 hours, and he went to bed. And I said, I'm not ready yet. And I'm sitting there, and I'm asking God, help me. I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, I hear, I'm listening. And it was incredible. It was like I could hear almost like swirling harp music, and a brand new song was born. I hear an angel whispering, telling me he's listening. So everything I say and do should be fit for an angel too. And that song is on the front page of my website. I started doing it at my Elvis concerts, and it was one of the most popular songs that I did. And I sold, no matter how big the audience was, 10% of the audience would buy a copy of I Hear an Angel Whispering. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So it's there to console people. And when God gave it to me, he said, I'm giving you this new music, not to make you famous, not to make money, not to make you rich. It's for you to go help people.
That's what we're missing in this world.
Yes.
People willing just to help people. I think those connections are made through story. And it's been that way for thousands of years. If you go back and look at cave paintings, right? What were they doing? Yep. They were telling stories.
Telling stories.
What are we doing
singing
today?
Songs. Don't forget the music.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Story and song.
So from cave paintings to Zoom meetings in this current COVID world, we have nothing but stories to connect us with our past, our present, our future, and all the people around us. Exactly. And when we share that, we get to connect with others. And that seems to be the thing that makes our life worthwhile.
Yes.
It's to share our meaning with others. So, yeah, what a story, man. What a story. I know you told me that you have an ebook that you're coming out with now, too.
Yes. Yes. As I started, once I wrote this book, I was still in Elvis mode, thinking, look what I did, because I went from a garage band with my first guitar at 15 years old and made it to Vegas. I was inducted into the original Elvis Impersonators Hall of Fame, back in the 80s. And I thought, wow, and then Gordy said, your story needs to be heard. And I thought, okay, my story is about what I was able to accomplish in spite of it all. Right. And so, but as I was writing the book, I began to realize that there's lessons in here. There's these little life lessons, if you can find a job, you can find 2 jobs. If you can help a person, you can help a group of people. All these little things that I've learned along the way, I put in this book as little life lessons. And then I tried to get out there and get some attention by telling people, look what I've done. I went back to my old Elvis contacts, right? And a couple of them, yeah, that's good. That's interesting. We didn't know that about you, blah, blah, blah. And then it just kind of like fell off the cliff. And I'm going, okay, I got the book. My kids and my grandkids are going to know my story now. So that came out of it. I got this Lutheran boys group who took 60 books, and that's going to help. If you help one person, you've done good, right? So how much is enough now, right? So I'm still thinking there's more to do. And all of a sudden I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and on the TV news comes this Dr. John DeGarmo, which I guess you said has been on your broadcast sometime during the past year. And by the way, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary.
Well, thank you.
And so Dr. John DeGarmo comes on, and he's talking foster care. Man, my ears perk up. And he's on the news, and he wants to help reform the system and help get some of the bugs out of it and make it better and fix some of the problems. And he said, here's my website. Here's my cell phone. Call me if you want to help. And I'm thinking, aha, Dr. John, I wrote a book. And he goes, that's nice. He said, I've got a lot of info. He says, I'm of course, by this time, he's been doing this 10, 15 years, and I'm sure he's seen dozens and dozens. There are a lot of people like me out there who, have struggled, and they've written about it, and they want to encourage people, and that's all good. We're all on the same team here trying to help each other. But he has a mentoring program, and he said, I will help you become a speaker so that you can go out and put your message out there. And I'm thinking, one of the things I learned in life, because we skipped over my corporate life, because not only did I entertain and go to Vegas, but I also took a steady job, people, not just a dream job. I also got a job at Michigan Bell, AT&T, and I worked in corporate America for 35, 40 years and became a mid-level executive there. So they paid for my college and helped me do all this. But John DeGarmo comes along and he says, I'll help you get into the speaking circuit. And I'm thinking, one of the things I learned is, if you want to be successful in anything, here's another life tip, folks. If you want to be successful in anything, go find somebody that's already successful doing that and try to learn from them. Find out what you can. Follow what they do. And it's easier to do now on the internet than it was back when I was growing up, right? So as all part of that, John DeGarmo suggested that I create an ebook with some of my more focused tips and give it away free to anyone who wants to join my newsletter to get involved, and maybe we can bring them along and help them to help others, right? So I wrote this ebook, and I just finished it last week, and it's up on my website, DannyVann.com, 2 N's in both names. And if you go there, you can sign up for my newsletter free, right? Right now, it's going to probably come out 3-4 times a year, nothing major. But you get this ebook, which I wrote, which focuses on foster care youth survivor basics. Man, if I would have known that at 17 years old, when I finally left my dad a note on the phone when he went camping that weekend, the note said, "You've done enough. I'll take it from here." And I had some people who loved my singing, agreed to take me in. I packed everything I own in 3 grocery bags, and they drove me 100 miles away to Cadillac, Michigan. And I started my life as an emancipated minor. I didn't have this stuff. I didn't know, other than these people are taking me in. Now I got somebody else taking care of me. But I did get a job. I went through co-op at school. I knew I wanted to be a singer, so I already had a career in mind. So I started thinking about what Dr. John said, and I said, as I go out in Facebook, and I'm on Facebook and YouTube and not so much LinkedIn. I do see some stuff on LinkedIn, but the Facebook groups of the foster kids, of the former foster kids, and some of the foster parents that are struggling, most of the struggle that I'm hearing is, what do we do after they age out? What happens to them when they don't get adopted? They don't have a pattern. They don't have the training. They don't have a career. So I put this ebook together of foster care survivor basics. Survive to strive. And it has over 3 dozen links in there to all kinds of services, housing, planning a career. I wrote an article, by the way, on how to follow your passion into your career. There's government programs, there's grants, there's even a suitcase organization out there. Rob Shear has a free suitcase for foster youth that are coming out of the system. Don't send them out in another plastic bag. His organization gives them a free suitcase. iFoster phone program. All this, American Bar Association has free foster legal services. And so I put all this together to help not only the youth, the kids, but also the foster parents who have a heart for the kids, but can't carry them into college years and beyond. And, for whatever reason, they're not adopting them, so that's the ebook, and it just came out. I just came out with it last week, and I hope it helps.
Well, I don't hope. I know it will. Well, I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask. Just real quick questions, If you had a magic wand that you could wave and fix one thing in foster care, what would you change?
I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. I think the thing I would like to see changed is the reunification requirements. I mean, it was great that Dad got us back, but as I said, it kind of backfired, because even though he got the house back and he got another woman to help take care of us, he didn't get any healing. He didn't fix any of the problems that caused this whole thing in the first place, and I'm not sure how to make all that happen, going forward, but
that's why it's a magic wand.
Yeah, that's why the magic wand. But boy, if we could, and this is part of what some of the organizations that I'm hearing out there that are wanting to help repair that whole system. It's one of the things that I am hearing resonating out there, is it isn't just about helping these kids or fixing these kids or coaching the kids or mentoring them or counseling them. You got to get back to the whole family. The whole family needs help. And some of them don't want it, obviously, unfortunately, but we need to work on the whole problem, not just a piece of it.
That makes sense. What do you wish people understood about your story that you think most of them don't?
That's a tough one, because the people that I'm trying to help are on both sides of this story. I'm trying to help foster parents as much as foster kids. And I think that the biggest problem in all of this, even all the way back to my family, is Dad was an agnostic. His dad was not God-fearing. Okay. Grandma was. My mom, to some extent, was. I think the thing that I wish people knew about me is my resilience, my hanging in there, my positive attitude comes from my knowing at the very core of me that there is a God. And even though he, quote unquote, allows these things to happen, he's a very loving God, a very loving Father, and he's doing a work in all of us. We're each at a different place and a different time. But one of the things that's way down at the beginning of all this, even all the way back to the Garden of Eden, is he gave mankind free will. It's our choice. Unfortunately, when we choose what the Bible calls evil or bad, because it's not God's way, if we don't choose love, if we don't choose to honor and obey our Creator, then there's consequences. And now all these thousands and thousands of years and generations in families that have come since then have just, just imagine chaos on chaos and garbage on poison, on chemicals, on ugliness for all these years and generations. You got a mess. And that's why he's going to come back and restore things someday. But my resilience is because I know there's a God, and I know that ultimately what he's putting me through and my family is for good. Do I understand 100% of what that good is right at this moment in time? No, I have a better understanding now than I did when I went through it. But we can all look backwards and say, oh, well, I see why that happened to me, because look what I learned.
Well, the last question I have here is, what does support look like for you?
What does support? You mean my support?
Yeah, as you were supported going through your journey, either as a kid or on up till today, what's been some of the most valuable support you've received?
It's been those unexpected smiles. It's been a nun in an orphanage that's Irish, that hums Irish tunes under her breath as she's handling these monsters who are all acting out because they're angry and frustrated. It's been the Knights of Columbus volunteers that show up with a pickup truck full of ice cream in the middle of the summer. It's been the Protestant minister in Cadillac after I became an emancipated minor and got kicked out of the house I was in because I wouldn't marry their daughter. It's in the book. It's in the book. There's these stories, man, I could go on. So Daddy saw dollar signs when he heard me singing like Elvis. Anyway, when I got kicked out of that house, I went and lived on my own because I had a job. I carried my own weight. Carry your own weight. If you don't work, you don't eat. Okay? Carry your own weight. So I did that. Another reason why the dad kicked me out of the house is I was bringing groceries home and he wasn't. He was disabled and he got angry because I was doing more for the family. But irregardless, it was the right thing to do. But all of a sudden, I get called in the principal's office in high school and he says, "I'm sorry, you can't go to school here anymore." And I went, "What? You don't live with that family anymore. You're 17. You can't go unless you live with a tax-paying guardian or adult." And this high school English teacher came forward. Her husband was a Protestant minister, and they agreed to take me in. Those moments were so awesome. God was there, I know, but these people had to say, "Yes, I'll do it." That whisper had to be answered and converted into action. All through my life, there have been these kinds of situations that have happened. People have told me no. I've been discouraged. I've been angry because I wanted to do something and I wanted it now. And I learned 5 years later that had I gotten it, I would have destroyed whatever it was I would have gotten, right? Because I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't ready. And then when I finally got it, I looked back and I understood. Those moments, those smiles, those people, those foster parents, right? Those advocates that say, "You know what? I'll try it, or I'll do it once, or I'll drop something off. Just get involved, do something." And then the kids that came along and the ones that locked arms and said, "I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to beat this." Those are those moments that encourage me and restore me and have helped me keep going.
Wow. That's a mouthful. That and I'm sorry, but the story about not marrying the daughter, that's worth a book in and of itself, I think. Well,
oh, man.
Danny, I want to appreciate you for coming on today and telling your story with so much vulnerability and reaching out and trying to help others, because it's the one thing that everyone can do. It may be different for you than it is for me, but we all have a part to play in this game, and you're definitely playing your part, and we appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. All right, Foster Care Nation, I want to thank you for listening to Danny's story. I hope you have gained some knowledge and wisdom that you can bring into your life and your family. Be sure to come back next week. We put up news shows every Tuesday. If you'd like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at fostercareuj@gmail.com. You can connect with other like-minded people at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. Don't forget, we have a Patreon where you can support our mission at patreon.com/fostercarenation. And as always,
I thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thanks. You are so super awesome.